is Maya McCarthy. I am a part of the student union movement here at MATC. We do ask that all questions please be held until the end of the program. As a member of the student union movement, bringing this conversation to MATC was very important so that we can educate our students and our community about the religious and racial hatred that is encompassing the events that we have all faced. Like people all over the world, we are outraged by the murders in San Bernardino and Paris, just like we are angered by the hateful murders in Oak Creek, which is just a couple blocks down from here, the Sikh temple, and in Charleston. We believe in the American ideal. That is that all people should be treated equally. And the way to respond to that hatred is with more democracy and more equality. What's being put out right now is hate through discrimination and racism. And by defeating that, defeating racism, and discrimination is with equality and standing together in solidarity. Today, we have a special guest speaker, a woman who has worked a long time as a Milwaukee activist, as well as the president of the Milwaukee Muslim Women's Coalition. It is an honor to have her speak. I am thoroughly excited, and with gratitude, please help me welcome Janan Najib.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And for those of you that are standing, I know the hall is filled. There's nothing wrong with sitting on the carpeted floor. If you feel more comfortable, just make yourselves comfortable, because we want to have a good, honest discussion here. I was asked to do a teach-in on Islam, but especially I wanted to be able to address the issues that are out there today. But I really want to start by just reading something to you. I think that it is very important for us to put the types of things that are happening, and particularly the hateful reaction against Muslims, the broad brush approach of branding all Muslims based on the actions of a few. I think that there's something that is actually not so unusual about that. In fact, it is part of the history of our country. I'd like to just read something to you, and I want you to tell me what you think. Beware the world's most threatening religion, a dogmatic, anti-democratic spiritual regime governed by clerical tyrants bent on worldwide domination. Migrants and refugees escaping political repression in their homelands. They cross the ocean determined to exploit the very freedoms they will eventually strive to overturn. Garbed in religious costume to set them apart, these swarthy foreigners huddle in enclaves in our cities and towns. Bent on undermining our values and transforming our way of life, they swear allegiance to an authoritarian despot who issues religious edicts that govern virtually every aspect of their lives, from how they are to vote to how many children they are required to have. Their treatment of women is especially barbaric. Among their numbers are many given to violence, embedded in secret underground networks. Despite their apologist denials, the mass of believers is sympathetic to the terrorists and shares their basic political orientation. And make no mistake, the new immigrants seek to establish their own schools, seminaries, and private religious institutions, which will serve as safe houses and nurseries of radical religion and revolution. Does that sound like Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Who do you think it is?
State Department.
These were the nativists at the turn of the century talking about the Irish Catholics coming into the United States. Does it sound familiar? Does it sound familiar? You know, unfortunately, our history is replete really with discrimination, racism, intolerance against different religious and ethnic groups, dating as far back as the founding of the colonies. For those of you that are history buffs, and actually all of us should have some sense of our very short history in this country, the leaders of the early colonies didn't want Jewish immigrants, and they wanted to expel them for fear that they would infect the colony. And the early Georgia colony banned Catholicism. And then let's not forget about the unfortunate history of the African American community in this country and the lynching during slavery. What about in 1882 when California signed the Chinese Exclusion Act banning Chinese? How about the Native American rituals that for many, many years were considered offenses in this country, punishable by up to 30 years in prison, for them to practice their faith traditions? So are we surprised now when we see dozens of states and legislatures across the country wanting to ban Sharia law? What is Sharia law? Do these people even know what Sharia law is when they say they want to ban Sharia law? The problem is that we have individuals that are exploiting the fears of many, many people that are really not knowledgeable about Islam, about the Muslim community. And so they are basically taking that lack of knowledge, exploiting it to their advantage, and creating this type of fear-mongering for their own purposes, their own political agenda and their own purposes. And we can't fall into that trap. We can't fall into that trap because we know that what people like Donald Trump, for example, is saying about Islam and Muslims is just ludicrous. It's outrageous. And nobody cares about what Donald Trump is saying. I have no interest in teaching Islam to Donald Trump. I would rather teach the US Constitution to Donald Trump because he obviously doesn't know anything about that. But what my concern is really is the hundreds of thousands of people that are following him and applauding him. Those are the kind of people that go in and then shoot up the Sikh temple in Oak Creek. These are the type of people that are easily used and easily indoctrinated. Let's not worry yet about these individuals that are being indoctrinated from overseas. We've got people that have access to the airwaves, that have constant access in the news, and they are in fact indoctrinating people within this country to commit acts of crime against minorities. So let's not forget that. I want to just start basically by just giving you some facts, because a lot of people, we called it a teach-in on Islam, and I think it's important for me, in spite of the fact that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what's going on in the world, it is important for people to have at least a general understanding of who Muslims are and what it is that they believe. So Muslims are not this cult. They are the second largest faith on earth, 1.6 billion people. 1 out of 4 people on earth consider themselves Muslims. 56 countries in the world are predominantly Muslim. And in the United States, there are 7 to 8 million Muslims. In the greater Milwaukee area, we have at least 15,000 Muslims. And I see Oak Creek MATC has a good representation of those 15,000 Muslims. So it's important also to know that when we talk about Muslim is not synonymous with Arab. And Arab is not synonymous with Muslim. Because there are many Arabs that are not Muslim. There are many Arab Christians, there are Arab Jews, there are Arab atheists. So we need to be able to also differentiate between that. In fact, the largest number of Arabs in the United States are not even Arab Muslims, they're actually Arab Christians. What are some of the basic Muslim beliefs and practices? Muslims believe in one God. They don't have a Muslim God. They don't have a separate God. They believe in one God, the God of Abraham. I always tell my fellow Christians and Jews, who is your God? Is it the God of Abraham? Then we believe in the same God. As Muslims, we're ordered to also believe in the angels, believe that they obey the will of God. We believe in the books that were revealed by God. So when we're talking about the Psalms of David, the Torah of Moses, the Bible of Jesus, all of these we believe to be actual revelations from God. We believe in a chain of prophets, including Noah and Abraham and Moses and Jesus and Muhammad. We believe in a day of judgment. We believe in God's knowledge of what happens to all of his creation. And we believe in life after death. So when we talk about Muslims believing in all of these prophets and believing in these scriptures, it also means that our relationship with people, particularly that receive scriptures like Christians and Jews, is going to be an honorary relationship. And it is. Within the Quran, Muslims, Christians and Jews are called people of scripture or people of the book, which is an honorific title recognizing that they received scripture and revelation from God. Many people are not aware that as Muslims, our Holy Quran has an entire chapter called Maryam or Mary, referring to who? The Virgin Mary. As a Muslim, I cannot be a Muslim if I do not believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. We don't believe Jesus is a son of God. We believe that Jesus is a miracle that came by God in the same way that Adam and Eve were created without a mother and a father. So as a Muslim, I need to recognize these communities. And so this is what 1.6 billion Muslims on earth believe. As Muslims, we also have particular practices, and these are some of the things that you may encounter. For example, besides our declaration of belief, this is what makes us a Muslim, the understanding that we believe in the one God, the God of Abraham, and we believe that Muhammad is the final messenger of God after the other messengers. We're also required to pray 5 daily prayers every day. And when we pray those prayers, we turn where? We turn to face the Kaaba, which is in Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia. The unveiling of Mecca, of the Kaaba, is within the Bible itself. When God in Genesis promises Abraham that he's going to make a great nation out of Ishmael, who's he talking about? He's talking about the descendants that are going to come later, who are then the Arabs, and then from within there, the Muslims. When the Bible gives us the story of Hagar and Ishmael being sent to a barren desert, where is that barren desert? That barren desert is Mecca. That barren desert is Mecca. When the Bible talks about Ishmael kicking his foot and water coming from that location, that's a well of Zemzem that to this day Muslim pilgrims drink from. So many times people are going to try and divide Christians and Jews and Muslims, but we have the same history. We have the same lineage. We can't allow people to divide us, because we need to have the knowledge to be able to confront that. And knowledge is strength. A lot of times people will take the dress code of Muslim women and use that as a way of saying that, well, Muslims denigrate women or Muslims oppress women. What did the Virgin Mary dress like? Did she have a mini skirt on? Did she kind of look a little bit like us? As Muslims, she's our role model. And so if this is our public dress, let's not say that this is because Muslims oppress women, Let's say it's because Muslims follow Mary, the mother of Jesus, in her modesty and in her dress. As Muslims, we believe that faith is a personal journey. Free will is essential. And so when you hear people tell you that Muslims want to convert everyone to Islam, I will tell you that as a Muslim, that's against my religion. I cannot convert. Only God converts hearts. I can explain my religion to you, but I can't convert. And that's why in Islam, when people want to help individuals in poor, poverty-stricken countries, it is forbidden for us to come in with a bowl of soup in one hand and a Quran in the other hand, because that's taking advantage of their misery and trying to indoctrinate them. We have to help them for the sake of God. And so this concept of forced conversion, or this concept of trying to trick people into conversion, is not a concept that is familiar to Islamic ruling and Islamic practice. What are some of the commonalities that we have as Muslims with Jews and Christians? We believe in the same prophets. Many people are really very surprised when they hear us talk about Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob and Moses and all of these prophets. We consider them to be our prophets as well. We carry the same moral code. We don't believe that God's in the business of confusing people, telling one group of people, yes, you can kill, and another people, no, you can't kill. So we carry the same moral code as found in the scriptures of the Jews and the Christians. As Muslims, we have to have tremendous respect and love for Jesus and Mary, to the extent that there are some Muslim scholars that even believe that Mary was a prophet. That's what I said. Some Muslim scholars believe that Mary was a prophet. The same Mary, the Virgin Mary, that gave birth to Jesus. As Muslims, we believe that Sarah and Hagar, Ishmael and Isaac are all held in high esteem. And we don't view Sarah as this jealous woman that imposed upon Abraham, imposed upon God to throw Muslims, to throw Hagar and Ishmael out into the wilderness. We believe, again, it was part of this more important mission that eventually led to the site and the location where Prophet Muhammad was going to be born, and where the religion of the faith of Islam was going to start, and where in this barren desert now for 1400 years, 24/7, the glorification of God takes place. I want to read to you a passage, a short verse from the Quran, again, so that you can understand what people say about Muslims, but what Muslims know about themselves and about their teachings. Proclaim. Now this is within the Quran itself. It's saying to the believers, proclaim, we believe in God and the revelation given to us, and the revelation given to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, and that given to Moses and Jesus, and that given to all the prophets from their Lord. We make no distinction between one and another of them, and to him, meaning God, we submit. Although as Muslims we believe that God is neither male nor female. That's why we use the term Allah. There's a limitation with the term God. Also, the term God can be pluralized, as making it as gods. The term Allah cannot be pluralized. So when Muslims say Allah, it's not a Muslim God. It's the Arabic term for God, and we believe to be the personal name of God. Does anyone know what the term for God is in Aramaic, the language of Jesus?
Jehovah.
Allah. Allah. Because both are Semitic languages. And so these are the things that we need to know. This is how we empower ourselves. with the knowledge, so that when people decide that they want to divide and they want to create hate, we need to have this kind of knowledge. As Muslims, we are required also to believe that all human beings are created equal, that all came from Adam and Eve, that every human being deserves dignity, regardless of who that human being is. I want to now just quickly address, and you're going to find me just kind of flying through some of these things because of the limited time that I was given, but I want to go through a few important points. One of the terms that is thrown out quite a bit is Sharia law, that boogeyman. Sharia law, for many of these people that are worried about Sharia law, and you have all of these legislatures that are banning Sharia law. Now keep in mind that the Muslims make up probably 1-2% of the people in the United States, and so the chances of the Muslims overthrowing the Constitution of the United States and imposing a foreign law is probably as as expected as Bigfoot becoming president. It's something that's ludicrous, it's something that's absurd, but you have people wasting time and money and taxpayer money discussing something that is never going to happen and doesn't even make sense. So just so we, again, arm ourselves with information. What is Sharia law? As Sharia itself means what? The way to the source of water, because the water gives life. Water is the thing that is central to all creation. And so basically it's saying the meaning of that is the way to the good in this life and the good in the hereafter. Muslims believe that these are laws that are ideal for human society. And there are two primary concerns of Sharia law. One is the relationship of the individual with society and God, and two, the relationship with people and the rest of creation. So what are the goals of Sharia law? Sharia law, and I'm just going to give you the 5 main goals because of course we're limited on time. The first and foremost goal of Sharia law is the preservation and the protection of life. So when people are fearful of Sharia law, they're fearful of what? A goal that has preservation and protection of life. And so it includes, there are volumes and volumes on just this one law that talk about the right to life and the duty to protect it, the prohibition of killing and definition of the permissible exceptions. And so people will say, well, how about those Muslims that are committing killings and committing crimes? Are there Christians and Jews and everybody else that commit killings and commit crimes? Are Muslims the only ones that have that are guilty of committing these horrific acts? Let's talk. Let me just kind of sidetrack for 1 second here. We're talking about the horrific acts that took place in San Bernardino, California. Do you know that this year there have been 355 crimes in which, in each crime, at least 4 people have been killed? But this is the one that's highlighted. Who did the rest? Overwhelmingly, white supremacist groups and Christian militias. Why are we not hearing about that? Why are we not? How long did the news cover the killings at the abortion clinic by a Christian that took place at the same time as the San Bernardino killings? We're not saying that anything's justified. These are horrific. These are criminal acts. But why do we carry a different yardstick for each group of people? 355 acts took place this past year. But this is the only one that we're highlighting. We're only going to stigmatize Muslims. Why don't we stigmatize white Christian men? Why don't we ban white Christian men from entering the country. You know, when we think about it, we realize, honestly, the stupidity. But we have to be knowledgeable. We have to arm ourselves with information. What is the second Sharia law? The freedom of religion. The freedom of religion and worship is a basic human right, and it's not for Muslims only. We are required as Muslims to fight to free churches and synagogues if people are not allowing Christians and Jews and others the free worship of their religion. This is part of Islamic Sharia law. Third part of Sharia law, preservation and protection of the intellect. Mind is the hallmark of a human being, allowing us to know good and evil and explore God's creation and nature. The freedom of thought and expression are basic human rights. So when we have countries in the world that call themselves Muslim that are not allowing people the freedom to speak out, it's not because they are practicing Islam. It's in spite of Islam, and that's why we have turmoil there. Because the people there also want freedom. And unfortunately, something we need to recognize, that many of those countries are being propped up by our own government. Let's not forget that. The fourth Sharia law is the protection of private ownership and property. That means you can't take people's property. And the fifth Sharia law is procreation and preservation of the species. Like I said, there are volumes and volumes on this, but I just want to give you just an idea of what Sharia law is. So when people say, oh, we want to ban Sharia law because that means beheading people. No, Sharia law does not mean beheading people. There are people beheading people, but Sharia law does not mean beheading people. So what are the causes of much of the unrest that we are seeing currently in the Middle East and many of the Muslim countries? Much of the unrest is due to remnants of colonialism. If we look back at history, and unfortunately I grew up here in Milwaukee, in fact, and I don't recall ever learning about the 1,000 years where Islamic civilization governed much of the world and gave to much of the world science and algebra and philosophy and all of these great things. I never learned that under Islamic rule and Islamic civilization that Spain was this great multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society that brought so much to the world. And it wasn't until the Christian Inquisition that all was destroyed. I didn't learn that in school. Also, much of the unrest due to the tyrannical leaders and rulers. Many of these were left as remnants of colonialist rule. The colonialist powers left, France. When we talk about France and what's going on even in France, France ruled Algeria. They were one of the most barbaric colonialist rulers. When Algeria got their independence from France, 1 million Algerians died in the process. 1 million Algerians. And many of these North African migrants that have found their way to France are actually people whose parents and grandparents, not that long ago, lived under French colonialist rule. And so in France, these migrants are hated. They are discriminated against. In many ways, they are similar to the African Americans in our inner cities and the history of African Americans in our cities and in our history. Although they represent a small part of the population, they represent an enormous part of the prison system in France. Very similar to African Americans in our country. Poverty and patriarchy. All of these cause unrest. And this is not just particular to Islamic countries. This is particular to any country in the world when you have unrest and you have poverty and you have all of these types of issues. And you have U.S. policy. We have to be honest here. What has U.S. policy done? You know, we look at Iran. Currently, Iran is represented as this horrible, horrible country in the world. But let's look back at the history of Iran. Too often, our sense of history starts with what we had for dinner. But let's look back. In the 1950s, Iran elected a democratic leader, Mossadegh. So what happened? Our CIA didn't want a democratic leader in Iran. They went in and overthrew Mossadegh. They overthrew a democratic leader. The CIA, our CIA, went into a foreign country and overthrew a democratic leader. And who did they install? They installed the Shah of Iran, one of the most brutal dictators in the history. He killed tens of thousands of his people and ruled with an iron fist. So then again, when Khomeini came, and all of these, and the Iranians, they have distrust and dislike for Americans. We need to know where it's coming from. It didn't happen in a vacuum. There's a history there. And so we need to understand that history. So what is jihad? I'm going to throw terms at you. What is jihad? It doesn't mean go kill non-Muslims. Jihad is actually a beautiful term in Islam. It just simply means struggle. There's a greater jihad and there's a lesser jihad. The greater jihad is the struggle within your soul. The struggle to do what's right. The struggle to remain on the right path. To be just, to be honorable, to be moral. That's a greater jihad. The lesser jihad is a struggle for justice. And you cannot go outside your country to struggle for justice. What you do is inside your country. So if you are being oppressed, if you are being occupied, if people are killing you in your country, you have a right to defend yourself. That's what jihad means. It doesn't mean go carry out terrorist acts. And so when the media gives the name to terrorists that they are jihadists, we are legitimizing them. We're giving them a term that basically means to the Muslim world that these are individuals that are struggling for justice. They're struggling against oppression. And so it's important to know how we use terms. So what is ISIS? Let's talk about ISIS. Let me ask you one question. Did you ever hear about ISIS before our invasion of Iraq? Honestly, did anyone ever hear about ISIS before the invasion of Iraq?
No.
So where did ISIS come from? We created ISIS. The United States of America and their policies created ISIS. The leaders of ISIS are those generals that were under Saddam Hussein. When the government of Saddam Hussein were disbanded, those generals were out there. There were tons of generals. And who are their recruits? Who are they recruiting? Besides getting to the hundreds that they're recruiting from outside the country, who are the recruits inside? The recruits to ISIS are those kids that were 9, 10, 11, 12 years of age when we were shocking and awing the hell out of Iraq, a country that had nothing to do with anything, just because we thought they had weapons of mass destruction, and we felt that we have the right to go in and destroy a country, destroy it and send it back to the Stone Age, killing 1 million human beings, civilians. And then now we say, well, actually, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. Oops, sorry. So the recruits of ISIS are those kids that saw family members that saw nothing but day after day after day after month after year of destruction, of bombing, and they don't know what civil society looks like anymore. They have no clue what civil society looks like. We have our military, many of them that some of them were, in tanks, they were in airplanes. Some of them saw actually some combat on the ground, some didn't. But we see that they suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And so we're trying to find reasons for why some of them are committing suicide, why some of them are involved in killing, why they're divorcing their wives or husbands or whatever the case is, and they're having all these struggles. But we don't think that the people that were actually eating those bombs, that those kids have post-traumatic stress disorder and much more. So we created ISIS. Let's not forget that. How will ISIS be defeated? That's often a question that's asked. That's the golden question. We really don't know, but I can tell you that ISIS will not be defeated by bombing them to the ground. Because when we send our bombers and our jets, we're not looking down and see people walking around with a sign on their head that says ISIS. We're just bombing areas. And there are civilians in those areas. The way we defeat ISIS is by finding opportunities for those people that are being recruited by ISIS. By filling the area with people that can indoctrinate them to what is better, that can help them understand what civil society is, and can give them opportunities that have been lost because of the war that we launched. That's how we defeat ISIS. When we talk, again, about the types of things that are happening in the world, where we're looking at what happened in San Bernardino, and we say, well, how is it that some individuals like this, which to us, even as Muslims, is very unsettling and very scary, and it's very horrific to us to see that individuals like that can be indoctrinated by groups like ISIS. But it's the bully mentality and the victim mentality. When individuals walk into schools and start shooting up schools, and then we want to assess, why did they do that? A lot of times we find they have been bullied or whatever the case is. And so when you take a society that keeps saying, you are terrorists, we don't want you, we hate you, whatever, there are going to be fringes that crack. There are going to be fringes that say, they don't want us. We've been here. We're part of this society, but they don't want us. So we need to change the discussion, and we need to change what is being said by all of these Islamophobes that are basically prostituting themselves for votes. We need to put an end to that. Islamophobia is basically the irrational fear of Muslims. And its intent is to marginalize a society. But I can tell you, as a Muslim, and as a leader in the Muslim community, we will not allow Muslim extremists to define us, and we will not allow American Islamophobes to marginalize us. We are going to stand strong. I want to just end, because I want to give you, I know there's so much we can talk about, but I want to give a chance for questions and answers. But I want to end with a quote from the Quran, and I want you to think about this and understand what I am saying here. O humanity, you have been created out of a single male and a female, and made into nations and tribes so that you may come to know and cherish one another, not despise each other. Truly, the best amongst you is the one who is the most conscious of God. And that's the essence of Islam. Thank you very much.
guys. So right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up for discussion. So if you have any questions, what I'll do is just raise your hand and I'll call on you.
I want you to know that I've been asked everything, so nothing phases me, nothing bothers me, nothing insults me. I've been asked if I take a shower like this. I've been asked if, you know, if my husband had to escort me here, and I said, no, I ride my Harley here. So nothing phases me, please. I prefer that you ask me, because the problem is that there are too many people speaking on our behalf, and those people don't like us. So we'd rather speak on our own behalf. So please feel comfortable asking whatever questions you have.
What do you think of, and I have my own reading of this, but what do you think of ISIS appropriating the term Islamic and state for themselves?
It's obviously they're trying to give themselves legitimacy, and the problem is that we have a lot of the Islamophobes are going ahead and using these terms, Islamic State, Islamic State. You know what the Arabs call them? They call them Daesh. They don't even include that term. They don't give them that legitimacy. But it's the same way as saying jihadist. Jihadist, if you go into the Muslim tradition, is a very honorable term. It means you are struggling and you're dedicating your life for justice and for eliminating oppression. And so when you give them, we don't call them jihadists. Muslims themselves don't call these people jihadists. So
I'm also thinking that, you know, none of us should allow them to actually take that claim.
exactly, but the problem is the people that are highlighting it are people that want to highlight it because they want to have that confusion and that gray zone between all Muslims and Islam itself. And her question, just so you know, was what do we think about ISIS appropriating the term Islam and state and using Islamic State as their kind of their agenda?
Yeah, I know that if you could repeat the questions whenever
Sure,
they're asked,
no
so
problem.
the folks in the back can hear. But I'm yelling, so I'm sure you'll hear. I'm just curious about your thoughts on with Donald Trump almost popularizing and normalizing hate speech and fascism. I'm curious about if you, as somebody who's obviously a student of history, if you feel that that's unprecedented, and where do you feel like that's going to lead over the next year and beyond?
You know, I think it is. I think this is you know, part of history. And in fact, he even went and he said, well, you know, the United States has done this before. You know, when Donald Trump said that. When we think about McCarthyism, when we think about our internment of Japanese Americans after World War II, we didn't intern Japanese. We interned Japanese Americans. These were our neighbors. These were our colleagues. These were our friends. These were our students, our teachers. These are who we interned. And so, you know, they say that you're supposed to learn history so that history doesn't repeat itself. Unfortunately, I feel that as a nation, we forget history very quickly. And I think that it's important to go ahead and to make sure that we understand that. And it's really important for people to stand up against it. And honestly, if a Muslim stands up against that, well, we're Muslims standing up against it. I think what needs to happen are people that are going to stand up and say, you know what, I'm Christian, and let me tell you, you do not represent me.
Right.
You know? And I think that's what has to happen. Wow, we answered everything? Wow.
I'm an ESL teacher here, and I love my Muslim students. They're all wonderful. I tell everybody in my neighborhood what a wonderful group of students I have. Well, last week, one of my students came and told me, I've had him for a few years. He said, oh, his children are being bullied on the bus by other Arabs, and they're saying all kinds of things against the United States. And he's taught his children, no, we're happy to be here, we're safe because they lived in Syria. This is good, blah, blah, blah. So I told him, well, let's think about different school districts. because his children go to MPS. I am wondering if there's anything being done to help the children, to teach the children how to behave, or maybe having some Christian children with Muslim children, with Jewish children, with atheist children all come together so they learn to get along now before they're adults.
Right, and I think that generally in the school systems here, you know, I'm a product of MPS, frankly, and UWM. So I think that for those that grow up here, that's not a problem. I think that these are just especially difficult times. I can tell you that that we've run into we get numbers of calls, and we've had many women that have said, one told us that she's a student, a university student, and she was cornered in an elevator and spat on. Another one told us that she was, that she stopped at a gas station and a guy just came out and started all these vulgarities and actually tried to pull her scarf off. So we're running into all of these types of things, and bullying is not acceptable, and schools have to have a zero tolerance. I can tell you what, as an organization, we are launching. First of all, we are going to be sending shortly letters to all the school districts, encouraging them basically to have a zero tolerance. We have stories about, in many different schools where teachers are taking these incidents. I mean, if you said something that was anti-Semitic or even, anti-gay, whatever, it would be a big thing. And so what they're doing is just talking to the students. If they're young, yes, because that means they're just carrying it from their homes. But if they're older, no, there should be suspensions, there should be expulsions, every student should feel safe in school. No one should feel unsafe in school, So what we are launching, and actually we even have an event that's coming up at the end of January, where we have about 60 or 70 Catholic students that are coming from areas that generally don't encounter Muslims, and we're having a dialogue with them, and we're bringing Muslim students to dialogue with them, because I think that what will break down barriers is when people actually get to know each other.
Right.
And when they're all talking about the Green Bay Packers, it's like, really? When they're all talking about Hail Marys, really? So I think it's really important for people to understand really how similar we are. So what, okay, everybody practices a little bit differently, and in fact, really, Muslims, Christians, Jews are much closer than even people that don't believe in a God, for example. There's some commonalities there. The other thing that we're doing, and I'm hoping that this is something that all of you will actually take seriously and will want to get involved with, we are going to create, 2016 is really the year that we as my organization want to counter Islamophobia. And we're doing that by empowering Muslims and emboldening allies. And the way we're going to do that is a series of workshops where this is what we're going to do, teach-ins really, but more extensive teach-ins about Islam. Yesterday we had, coming to my center, we had a class from Alverno University. And so one of the students, she said that, Thanksgiving was really difficult with my family because they know that I'm taking a class on Islam, and all I heard from Uncle whatever, is blah, 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 those Muslims. And all I heard, nobody asked me what I'm studying, nobody asked me how I enjoy being in Milwaukee, nobody asked me anything. They all wanted to know, well, what about that course that you're taking, those Muslims? And she said, I countered them, but I still felt that I lack the knowledge, And so what we want to do is really help people gain the knowledge so that when Uncle Fred says, well, those Muslim men, they hold their women in chains, So then we've got the knowledge to be able to counter Uncle Fred. And for Muslims themselves, we also have found that there are many, many Muslims, because just like any other faith, they grow up Muslim, but they never really have the tools to be able to counter this type of thing. And what we don't want to have happen is to see our Muslim women, our Muslim girls especially, go into seclusion. We don't want to see our Muslim men walking around fearful, because many people, many Muslims, left authoritarian countries for freedom in this country. We're not going to allow that to happen, and I know that we have the Constitution to back us up.
One more question, then we have just close up.
Hi,
Go ahead.
it's not actually the question. I'm just I have to share something. You know, as a Muslim, I live in Milwaukee almost 16, 17 years, and my kids born here. But what is going on here that whatever this Islamophobia, there are comments, and it's just affecting us so much. And I'm really, really like emotionally very disturbed. You know, my kids are disturbed. You know, 2 days ago I went somewhere and they just said, my kids, give me one clue why we should not kill him. I mean, and my kids at night, and they're talking to me, Mom, you know, did you close the door? And what kind of fearful country we're living, you know? We talk about ISIS, and they took my son went to Arizona in June, and in a mosque for some lectures. And after he left, I heard the news, and I opened my I was on TV, and I was like shocked that they have heavy guns, like very heavy guns, and there's so many 200 police officers over there, and they have F Islam on their shirt. And it's the Jummah time, all the kids are coming outside. And in the Islamic Center, we often have this situation that they come with the, you know, my kids go to the Salam school, and I have to worry about that, everything. So when this American people or the people who are ruling this country, they're thinking about their kids, their life, their thing, how selfish it is. Why don't they think about us? We are citizens too. You know, we're citizens too. Like you said, like, you know, banning their refugees. How about they took over the country from the Latino? You know, just they should not forget that. You know, God can take the chance.
Yeah, no, I think I feel your pain. We hear it all the time. We hear it all the time. And I think, again, for everybody that's listening to this and listening to this pain, to understand that unfortunately, what I have to offer to you is that this has unfortunately been the history of our country here, but every community has eventually gotten through it, and we will get through it as well. It's a horrific, it's unfortunate, it's shameful, because it is neither Christian, nor is it Jewish, nor is it even a humanitarian thing to do, to take a broad brush and really color everyone with one broad brush. That's just plain racism. And the problem is that we sit and we give the airwaves to these type of people that say ridiculous things. Let's ignore them. I mean, we shouldn't be covering them. Why are we giving them that kind of dignity? You know, sensationalism sells. Unfortunately, you know, this is a big problem in this country. But what I have to tell you, and what I want to tell your kids, be proud of being Muslim, because what we have, believe me, it's something wonderful. And if people understand what it is that we stand for and what we believe in, they will also think very highly of us. And so, what I'm telling everybody, don't go into seclusion, don't go into hiding, don't be fearful, be flamboyantly Muslim. That's what you have to do.
We're going to go ahead and close up now, but we want to thank Chris Larson for being here and supporting the MHP students. A big round of applause for Janan Najib. I mean, seriously, you